Today we're going to be talking about the McGill Big 3 for people with lower back pain. We're going to talk about why we use them, when we use them, how many reps and sets, so on and so forth. If you are struggling with lower back pain and you do need some help with it, just click the link below, go through to my How to Overcome Lower Back Pain consultation, online consultation and coaching, and we can get you booked in and on the road to recovery. The three exercises that we're talking about are the modified curl up, the side plank and the bird dog. So the bird dog, very simple. You've seen me do it before. It's this exercise here, so on and so forth. Then we've got the side plank. Now obviously we've got the kneeling and the full side plank, but essentially we've got the side plank building the lateral musculature, the bird dog with the posterior musculature, and then finally the modified curl up, which is this position, and then just curling the shoulder blades off the floor. So it's a very small movement, and these are the exercises that he's been able to research and find out about that are the optimal exercises for people to lower back pain to start with. But what we're going to do first is we're going to talk about why we use them. Number one is that they are not pain reducers. They may well be indirect pain reducers, but these three exercises aren't direct pain reducers. So if you have back pain, with regards to the McGill method that he uses, there are steps before these exercises. These are the three exercises that he will promote and he will use for the majority of people with lower back pain when they're ready for it. But first of all, we have to understand the lower back pain well enough, and then we have to put in place the reducing of pain triggers. So the ability to use everyday postures, everyday movements, positions, loads, whatever it may be, to reduce the pain. As we've started then to reduce the pain, we can then move on to these three exercises. And then with regards to them being indirect pain reducers, because they are for the next two things that I'm going to talk about, because they're doing these next two things, they help then to reduce the pain further, but in an indirect way, not a direct way. The direct way of reducing pain is understanding the triggers and then reducing them, eliminating them, modifying them. That reduces the pain. Then you use these exercises to, first of all, which is the second thing that I'm going to talk about, which is to build endurance in the core musculature. So all these three exercises, so when we come down, we come out into this position, and what we're looking to do is build a capacity. So when we come on to talking about reps and sets, it will help, or I will help you understand how these build endurance. But the building of endurance basically reduces the likelihood of fatigue in the muscle, and it's at that point when back problems begin to start, when the muscles are fatigued. So we're looking to build endurance. Now, how we go about building endurance is not going into muscle fatigue and then pushing through it. What we need to do is to be able to build endurance is to, in some respects, understand where fatigue comes in and stop right at the start of it. And then what the body will do is it will do its compensation, and it will just build back a little bit with a little bit more endurance. And then again, we go a little bit further, and we go a little bit further, and we go a little bit further. And that's the same with all of them. So when we go into a side plank, what we're not looking to do is we're looking to keep it relatively straightforward, holding the position, and then coming out just, in some respects, before fatigue starts. So first thing is that they aren't direct pain reducers. The second thing is that we want to use them to build endurance and build the resilience and the robustness of the core musculature to be able to cope with everyday movement, everyday activities first. The third thing that they're useful for is reducing load to the spine whilst also building that endurance. And what that means is, if we go into a back extension, you may have seen a tutorial that I do on back extensions before. With regards to a back extension, if we were to lie down here and then lift our chest from the floor, that activates both muscles on either side of the spine. And when that happens, it creates a degree of compression on the spine because both sides of the muscles are working. When we go into an exercise like the bird dog, like this, what we do is we activate one side more than the other. So we're reducing that load to the spine. So what we're still getting is the muscle activation and the ability to build that endurance, but what we're also doing is keeping the load on the spine to a minimum. Because if it comes out that we have some sort of compressive trigger to the spine, then doing exercises that increase compression to the spine aren't going to be that useful. So we need to minimize that compression and then start to build the capacity of the spine to cope with that compression, if that makes sense. And that's what these 3 exercises are most useful for, is keeping the load low, but giving you the best opportunity to build that capacity within the spine. When do we use these 3 exercises? Well, again, I can tell you when we don't use them, and that is in the initial stages of back pain rehabilitation. And by the initial stages, I mean understanding the lower back pain. So that's going through some sort of consultation and assessment to understand the triggers of the spine, or the triggers of the pain. Once we understand those triggers, we can start to modify movement. So there may be some flexion intolerance, so it doesn't like flexion. So we need to, again, come more into that neutral posture as we're lifting, bending, sitting, whatever it may be. Sitting may be a trigger, which could be flexion, or it could just be the static nature of sitting. So we need to understand these different things so we can then put in place what we need to reduce the pain, because then once we can reduce the pain, we can start using these 3 exercises. Because what so many people do is they're in pain, everything's locked up and cramped up. What they then do is try and build exercise on top of that sort of cramped, uncomfortable state that the muscles are in, which is, again, that's just a shaky foundation that is eventually going to crumble, and then back pain is going to reinsert itself. And then what we think is we need more exercise, so we build more on top and then it crumbles again. What we need to do is get the foundation solid, which is the understanding of the pain triggers and then the modifying of the pain triggers. And finally, we're going to talk about how often and the reps and the sets. Well, how often we do them will depend on the individual. So it can be done every single day if your body allows you to do that. It may need to be done every other day. It could be done a couple of times a day. But again, it all depends on the individual and why we're using it. If we're using it multiple times a day, then we've got to be really aware of the fatigue that we could potentially be putting into the system. So as I mentioned before about the building of endurance, if we're doing these exercises to failure 2 or 3 times a day, we're going to be building up loads of fatigue in the system. So again, that's something that I wouldn't recommend in the initial stages. So when we use the exercises, it's more so to do it in a logical fashion and in some respects being able to understand your body. So it can be done every day, it may need to be done every other day, it may need to be done every 2 days. If it is being done every day, you may just come down, just come into the position, come out, hold, come back, hold, and here. Then we go into a side plank. We hold for a number of seconds, we turn around, we hold for a number of seconds, we go into the modified curl up and hold for a number of seconds. And that is it. That is all you do, because all you're looking for, possibly, in the initial stages, and again, this doesn't mean it's for everyone, but possibly in the initial stage, it's just the muscle activation that we need. And those 3 exercises done in one set for, let's just say 10 seconds each, could be enough. Just to get the muscle activation, just to understand and brace the core, that could set us up for another hour's worth of pain-free back, combined with different sitting, walking, so on and so forth. So again, it's not done in isolation, it's done in a mix of everyday activities, postures, positions and loads. That's how they could be used. So that is an example of it being used every single day and possibly a couple of times a day as well. So it's understanding the condition of the back and what the core muscles can cope with and the triggers of the back pain and what they could be telling us about our back pain. When it comes to reps and sets, I've already started to allude to this. So it could just be one set for 10 seconds or 5 seconds. It all depends on what your back can cope with. So we could be starting at that point. When it comes to, let's just say 2 sets, 3 sets, McGill recommends a descending style to the sets. So for example, set 1 could be, and again, I'll just use the bird dog as the example, but it could just be a 10-second hold here. So I'll have a timer here, and I'll hold for 10 seconds. And then I would come down, and then I would hold for 10 seconds. What I would then do for set number 2 is I would reduce that time, so it may be 7 seconds. So I would come into position, I would extend out 7 seconds, 7 seconds, back down, and then the third set could be 5 seconds. Why are we using that, what would be time held rather than rep range for each set? Because it's all in the nature of building endurance. So what will happen is fatigue will set in earlier, again, depending on the condition of the muscles, will depend on how early you make the change. But essentially what we're doing is we're reducing the likelihood of fatigue within the muscle. So that's 10 seconds. Because it's going to come in earlier for the second set, we go to 7 seconds, and because it can come in earlier for the third set, we go to 5 seconds. So what we're always doing is we're not allowing the muscles to fatigue. Because another big thing with exercise, and the reason why we don't let it fatigue, is because if we're exercising for half an hour, and then we've got 23 and a half hours to go in the day, if we've completely fatigued our muscles in that half an hour, we're vulnerable during that other 23 and a half hours. So we have to make sure that we're keeping the condition of the back optimal all the way through the day and through the evening. So it's very important that we get these reps and sets right, but again, we can't do that without understanding the lower back pain and then modifying those pain triggers. Again, if you're struggling with lower back pain, just click the link below, go through to my How to Overcome Lower Back Pain online consultation and coaching. I also do have a face-to-face version of it. If you are in the UK and you want to come and see me here in the gym, just click the link below, go through, fill out the 2 questionnaires, and then I'll be in touch to get you booked in for either the online or the face-to-face consultation. If you've enjoyed this video and you like the content, please just go to the thumb below, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, click the bell icon, and it'll be great to have you on board as a subscriber.